We'll get started now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Buen Vivir's new and first virtual exhibit opening. The Buen Vivir Gallery is a project of Global Justice Ecology Project and was founded to utilize art and photography to present historical looks at movements for change, struggle, and everyday life. It was founded to counter the societal amnesia from which we collectively suffer, especially with regard to the history of social and ecological movements and issues, and to inspire new generations to participate in the making of a better world. The name of the gallery, Buen Vivir, means life and harmony between humans, communities, and the earth, where work is not a job to make others wealthier, but for a livelihood that is sustaining, fulfilling, and in tune with the common good. While the physical space of the gallery is closing, we are happy to be able to present this first virtual gallery event on a topic that is tremendously relevant to us here in the US today, as we are seeing uprisings across the country and the violent repression of the state being levied against them. In November and December of last year, Global Justice Ecology Project co-founders Ann Peterman and Oren Langell, who's also an award-winning photographer, traveled through Chile to document and publicize the massive Peoples Uprising that had started there in late October, led by students and youth. That uprising has also been subjected to extreme violence by the state, which they will be discussing in just a bit. While in Chile, Peterman and Langell shot dozens of videos and thousands of photos at street protests in Santiago and Temuco, as well as in two Mapuche communities near where Mapuche people were taking back their ancestral lands from timber companies. And today joining them will be Chilean activist Alejandra Parra, along with Gary Hughes of Biofuel Watch in California. The four formed the documentary team, co-sponsored by Global Justice Ecology Project and Biofuel Watch, that was in Chile last year. From here, please go ahead and direct your questions and comments through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens, and we'll get to those towards the end. But from here, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Oren.
Me. Oh, thank you. Can you hear me now? I'm a Luddite. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of start off saying that I've worked I've had anti-war photographs, anti-corporate globalization, events about struggles for the land, UN for I don't know how many years, and climate justice, environmental justice, and racial justice. I've been doing this for 5 decades in 5 different continents. So I wanted to thank KPFK Pacifica Radio in Los Angeles, especially the Sojourner Truth Show with Margaret Prescott, responsible for providing me a letter of assignment that enabled me to get media credentials for the UN climate conference scheduled for Santiago, later canceled. Thanks also to other Pacifica stations, also Brenda Norell of Censored News. I want to make sure we mention OCA in Santiago, the Latin American Observatory of Environmental Conflicts. They're one of our partners in the international coalition we have on the campaign to stop genetically engineered trees. I'm going to try to share my screen now. I guess wanted to just bring this into how important it is. There's been over 30 deaths in Chile. Hundreds into the thousands of people have been injured. People with eye injuries, 400 plus. Detention, thousands. And I think that this is really serious. Hopefully somewhere along the way we can lighten it up. But I will try now to get go full screen. And now you don't have to see my face big. That's good. Okay. So the first photo, I wanted to kind of introduce our team. That's Alejandra Parra from RADA, and this was at a march against an incinerator. And Alejandra is just amazing activist. That's Gary Hughes, who's smiling up there. He was standing by that statue, I think. And then I don't know if that was the same day that he got a chance to shoot a video of water cannons. And then there is Ann Peterman and who was Camilo, or can somebody answer that, who you're pointing to, unless you're pointing to ACAB.
Camila Castrayanka was a Mapuche man who was one of the Mapuche people in the struggle against timber plantations in Wallmapu, which is the Mapuche territory in Chile, who was murdered by the police. He was shot in the back by the police, and his name was raised very much during the time that we were there in honor of his contribution to the struggle and the Mapuche part in the struggle.
Thank you. And this is a photograph of me that Ann took. And I especially like this photograph because it's a heart with Victor Jara in it. And Victor, if you don't know who he was, please find out. He was a marvelous musician, activist, and he was killed during the Pinochet dictatorship. And there's all kind of reports how he was killed. But anyway, Victor Jara's music is fantastic. And if you get a chance to read up on him, please do. We flew in, Ann and I flew into Santiago and met Gary. And we had about 2 hours of sleep, and Gary wanted us to go out in the streets. So we did, and didn't know exactly what to expect. But this is sort of one of the sentiments, first things I saw, which kind of made me happy. And as soon as we got out in the streets, people were actually getting ready for protests. They were protesting. This man, I believe, climbed up this structure of a building to get things to break things off for shields, in case when tear gas came or whatever. Here's a man on top of that. And we weren't in Santiago too long, but things started to kick up, I guess, as the night began a little bit more. And this is right across from the Crown Plaza in Santiago. And if you'll notice, on the kind of middle to the left, there's a bottle being thrown, and you see the guy following through on the left. And this is when I think we knew it was going to get interesting. We flew then to Temuco, and we flew instead of taking it out of automobiles or buses because we weren't sure about if there were going to be blockades by the national police, Carabineros. And so this is one of the marches we attended. And Alejandra, you want to say what the people were doing?
This is in Temuco, right?
Yes, that was against the incinerator.
Oh, yeah, we were marching against an incinerator project, an incinerator to burn Temuco's garbage in another city, in the city of Lautaro, which is like 25 kilometers to the north of Temuco. And there are several Mapuche communities there that would be affected by this pollution from this incinerator. So we were marching this day to deliver more than 10,000 citizens' observations against this project to the environmental service on the last day of civilians' participation.
Sorry, I jumped ahead of you. I thought there was another photo. Thank you, Alejandra. And okay, this day, Ann, do you want to explain what's going on and what the day was? This was in Temuco.
Yeah, this was in Temuco. It was a women's march in Temuco. I can't remember the exact date, but we have a video from the march a little later, and women were rising up, expressing their rage against what was happening in Chile against women, especially by the Carabineros. When they would arrest women protesters, there was a lot of assault that went on inside the police barracks and the Carabinero barracks. So women were speaking out against this. And there's a very famous video of a performance by a group called Las Tesas, A Rapist in Your Path, people may have heard of. I don't think we have that video today, but you can easily look it up. And it talks very strongly about the women's uprising in Chile against violence against women. So this was a day that women were rising up, and this is in Temuco, which is in the heart of Mapuche territory.
Thanks, Anne. I believe I am going to get that video up on the Buen Vivir Gallery webpage on this exhibit, and also I'll put it on my Langell photography page because I'll mirror what we put up on Buen Vivir Gallery. So, oh, and this is actually also the Women's March, and wanted to explain. I think I jumped way ahead of myself, but I wanted to get into the photos. But if I'll try to give a little brief thing of why people are so upset in Chile. And first, I want to tell you why we went down to Chile in the first place. It was because of the United Nations Climate Conference. And we were very afraid what they were going to try to do, the UN and the corporations, was to basically make it simple, privatize all nature and all life. And we were totally against the commercialization of, or the commodification of life. So we went down knowing that Chile would probably have some good protests to protest this kind of stupidity. But we, when we got down there, the climate conference was changed. It went to Madrid, and NGOs that were down there, for the most part, flocked to Madrid, as did Greta. We stayed because what the UN and other corporations are trying to do is privatize nature. If one wants to stop privatization of nature, Chile seemed like the best place to be. One of the things in Chile is something that we heard is that in Chile is where neoliberalism began, and this is where it will end. So in October of last year, students rebelled against a fare hike for public transportation. That rebellion spread throughout Chile. Chilean President Sebastián Pinera responded with extreme force with no respect for the people. The constitution in Chile now is left over from dictator Augusto Pinochet, who was propelled into office with the help of the US in 1973 during a coup. And it was against democratically elected, ousted democratically elected President Salvador Allende. The US helped stabilize the economy with neoliberalism, free market capitalism. This is kind of what protests are about. This is kind of what's destroying much of the earth right now. Pinochet then turned over a lot of land, particularly Mapuche land by the thousands and thousands of acres, to corporations, particularly the timber industry. And in October, millions of people packed the streets later, and after the third hike, really turned into a rebellion with workers, students, women. Others demanded change, and the streets became battlegrounds. People were having constitutional assemblies throughout Chile, and then the pandemic hit, but organizing continues. And let's see where I go from here. Nope. Yes, I've never done a virtual opening. I'm used to like a real opening where right about now I'd say, please feel free to enjoy the wine and the cheese and whatever. But anyway, so we formed a documentary crew of that was really good, the four of us, and I am the photojournalist with the, and all the photos are mine. So after the Women's March, we then go to Waumapu, the main part of like a very outside of Temuco, and we went to two communities, Liempi Colipi and Cuelepe Lopez, and they were reoccupying, those Mapuche communities that were reoccupying their land that were stolen by corporations and people and the rich down there. And so they were taking back their land. And we were very fortunate, we were proud and honored to be able to be invited to come into those communities. This is a volcano that is kind of indicative of that whole area down there. And these are sacred mountains to the Mapuche, sacred volcanoes. They're absolutely beautiful. This is in one of the communities, the first one we went to. The women there are making fry bread, which was really cool. And we had a really interesting time, good talks. I think Ann has some videos that'll come in. And we were very honored. We were invited to watch them do a ceremony and let us film it and let us photograph it. And they, was it a portrayal of condors, Alejandra? You're on mute.
I think it's like a kind of an ostrich
Okay.
that lives now lives like in the north and far south, like in Patagonia. It's called Ñandú.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Anyway, it was really cool to be down there. And this is one of the entrances into the occupied territory. It's basically took this land over. One of the things they did on all the roads that are like logging roads or whatever, community roads, that not really for community, but for rich people or for somewhere to extract resources during land reoccupation, the Mapuche cut down trees. They did all kinds of things to make barricades and barriers to keep safe. And that evening after we went to the one community, we went to another, and I'll never forget when we first got there. We basically put Gary to the test to explain why we were there. And I think every Mapuche there just looked at us with a stone face of observation. And then after Gary talked, it was like, hey, yeah, come on, sit down, let's have some food. You know, it was really good. Gary gave a good speech about why we were there and the solidarity that we and the respect of the original people and their territory. And this is a young person blowing a horn. It's just on a cover of Fifth Estate. And another person that was that was a printer said he was afraid to print this because it made the indigenous person look like he was drinking alcohol, and it would make it a very bad thing to print. And finally we said, look, his cheeks are puffed up. He's not drinking alcohol. So anyway, there's funny things that go on like that in photography. And here are the men of this community. And what are these sticks called?
They are called chueca, or also palin, and it's for a game actually. Like it's kind of like the hockey.
Yeah, hockey, for sure. Okay, great, thank you. And then in the morning, we got a call, or Alejandro got a call from one of the communities saying that people, that the Carboneros, or Pacos as they're dubbed, came in and fired tear gas into the reoccupation and shot rubber-coated metal pellets into the crowd, injuring people. So we were, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 kilometers away, and we tried to get there as fast as we could, but all of a sudden the roads were blocked by people like this. They wouldn't let us in. It was kind of really disappointing. We didn't know what to do. I ended up showing all my credentials as press and UN credentials and blah, blah, blah. So they just kind of stared and took photos of it. But then Alejandra said, hey, I'm going to go as a human rights observer. I need to get there. So she started walking. And then Ann went with her, and Gary and I stayed in the car, and we went back to the community another way because there were like two entrances in, I mean, maybe more than two, but we went to the way we came the first day, yesterday. And we came in that entrance, and there were people there we didn't know if they'd stop us or what, but they were just waving their arms and telling us to go through. And we drove down this road and parked the car. And here were some Mapuche that were standing guard at the barricade after the people had been shot. They really, I don't know, this was an amazing time. And here are some of the Mapuche getting ready for a potential assault by the National Police, because we didn't know what was going to happen. By the way, this was in the United States that day was Thanksgiving, so it really had some ramifications in my head about that. Moving on, this is the gentleman that got shot, one of the people that got shot, but he got out of the hospital, I believe, and came right back to the barricade. And that's one of the things I noticed, that the people, they're really committed. This is their land. It's not. It's just who controls it, and they just want it back to live. And this is on the left is Alejandra, and on the right is Anne, and they are filming him. And I don't know, we're not going to show that video. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So anyway, let's see, I'm going to keep on going here. So this was the Lonco of the one community, and the Lonco is sort of the head man or whatever, the head person. And the Carabineros did not come back. And they were celebrating. The Mapuche felt that they had a nice victory for that. And any idea what the man said or is saying right there?
I think he's yelling Marichiwao, which is the...
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
We will win 10 times.
Yep.
That's the meaning of Marishiweo. Yeah.
And that's a very serious thing.
He's the Lonco of the community. Lonco means head.
And this is the Rio Curatin. Yes. Okay. The Rio Curatin. Anyway, it relates to the communities we went to, because their way of life was threatened because of dams that were going to be built, I believe. And so the other thing that would happen that we got involved in while we were there, by the way, the Rio, the land, I can't tell you how beautiful it is. And then we got involved in, this man was in jail. He's Alberto Kuromio. And I don't know, Gary, you were more involved in it than I was, but if you wanted to say a few words about Alberto.
Just really briefly, that Alberto Kuromio is a Mapuche representative, spokesperson for many of their land rights claims with the Alianza Territorial Mapuche. In the spring of 2019, Alberto was awarded the Goldman Prize, and it was his daughter who came to San Francisco to speak for him. And then his trial was happening in Temuco when we were there. And it was really a Kafkaesque experience, in that it was really clear that the Chilean state had fabricated charges against him to the point that he was acquitted and freed right about the time that we left Chile in the middle of December. But being there in support of Alberto Kuromio was a very, I don't know how to express the emotion actually that one felt when you're in the courtroom with him and knowing that he was being abused by the state in this fashion, and to sense that we were a part of something, and just being there, and for he and his colleagues to know that we were there. I don't think I can express it all just in words, but I think Oren's photo conveys a lot for myself, and I'm imagining for everyone else.
And on the blue scarf, Gary, there's a white symbol. Do you want to explain what that is?
I would actually feel a lot better if Alejandra explained it. There's some subtleties in these that I don't always express as well.
Well, it would be better if a Mapuche person would explain this, but I think it's related to the, the
Cosmovision?
north, south, yeah, cosmovision, and the directions in the earth. And I also wanted to add that he was in prison more than a year before the trial, just like a preventive measure, in preparation of the trial, more than a year in jail. And then he was released because there was no actually real proof of his involvement in the acts he was being accused of participating. And
Thank
that
you.
happens to a lot of Mapuche people.
And just to
Sure.
add, he was being persecuted because of his role as an environmental leader in the struggle by the Mapuche against hydroelectric dams, against tree plantations, and many other things. So he was targeted for his environmental leadership.
As are many Mapuche, and Mapuche are in jail now, and it's very, very sad situation. One of the things I skipped over, I'd like to just briefly go back. I don't want to make a big thing out of this because I don't have too much time and I want to go through the photos. But when we were with the Mapuche, the day that the raid happened and the men were shot and tear gas was all over the place, and nobody knew when the Carabineros would come back or what kind of force they would do, what kind of machines. We had no idea. And Gary and Ann and I don't know, I felt extremely honored, and I knew I felt that I was at the right place with the right time where I needed to be. And I mean, talk about feeling good on a mental level, and because of all the environmental and ecological work for the earth that we do, I just felt it was really amazing. And I know, Alejandra, do you have a thought to give how you felt?
Yes, actually, I wanted to say something about that moment when we were stopped by the police and they told us we couldn't go through the road because it was blocked by trees. And we said, no, that's not true. You are blocking it because you're raiding this community there. And then when I walk to the community with Anne, and we lost two guys, and we finally got to the community, and 10 minutes afterwards, you were there too, and you have got there through other way on the car. And that was a very happy moment to get together again. And then when this young man who was shot in the head by the police like 1 hour ago came and went back to the community and was there like ready to keep fighting. That was so exciting and so moving to see the conviction. And he wasn't even like looking bad, looking hurt. He only had that patch in the head, but we saw the pictures when he was bleeding and all that. So it was a really exciting and impressive moment.
Thank you, Alejandra. And I'll move on. And so after we were involved in the blockade and the reoccupation, when we left that day, we had to go back to Temuco. And Alejandra said that she knew of a hostel that we could go to, and also right across the street from it was this artisanal pub. And so we were all going, okay, yeah, right. So somehow Alejandra talked one of the Carboneros to let us get through so we could go to the hostel, which is directly at the end of the, looking at the photo, you see hostel, it says hostel. And we stayed there and we wanted to get some beer, but you can see all the tear gas and everything else. And then, there's like water cannons down the street. So we finally found a time, we made a break. We got it to the bar. It was amazing. People were running in and out, having drinks. having a few beers and going back out and fighting in the streets. And one time a water cannon came by and actually got some of the toxic water into the bar and on some of the crowd. And so that kind of pissed off the bartenders. And they just turned up Rage Against the Machine, REM, Smashing Pumpkins, The Clash. I haven't seen anything like that actually. And except for one time during a protest against the Vietnam War. And it's amazing the amount of energy that was there and the courage of people. Okay, you know, they stand up to all kind of things. Then we flew back into Santiago, and this is a Mapuche man carrying a Mapuche flag. The Mapuche presence was felt everywhere. I believe this is on the International Day of Human Rights. These are a protest or a visual protest of the eyes that were shot and all the things that were going on with this. And this is in Plaza de la Dignidad, and which is a gathering spot for the central spot of protesters gathering. It was very impressive. Okay. So yes, International Day of Human Rights. This guy that's, you know, wandered in kind of confused looking, and I took his photo, and he was just, I guess, I don't know what happened to him, but it was definitely he was injured. And it just struck me that, okay, this is the International Day of Human Rights, and this is Chile now, and it's sad. So here's a water cannon, and people are running away from it because the water cannons not only they shoot water, but they have some sort of a toxic substance inside. I'm not exactly sure what's mixed with the water, but it's not very good. And sometimes the people will just stand there and stand in front of the thing. I think this is the same water cannon that you'll see later in Gary's video. And here's some tear gas flying over the crowd. There was tear gas everywhere. When I get done with this, I think Anne's going to show us some things about what we had to wear bulletproof goggles because of the people being shot in the eyes, and all kind of things. It was like definitely prepared us to come back to the United States and wear masks.
And just to mention with the tear gas quickly, it was used completely indiscriminately. You know, there would be street fights between some of the younger protesters and the carabineros, but they would shoot the tear gas over those protesters and right at the people who were just walking down the street on the opposite side trying to get somewhere. So they were much more targeting, you know, more or less civilians with the tear gas to create chaos. And it was just really symbolic of what the carabineros were doing in Chile, with just targeting everybody with their violence.
And one of the targets.
This is Gary. I'd like just to add really quickly that there were several really devastating fires that were started by the carabineros' use of tear gas in Santiago. So you may see press reports about protesters starting fires or something, but to recognize that some of the most damaging fires were actually caused by the carabineros and their tear gas canisters.
Thank you, Gary. That came in a funny moment. No, it's probably the next one. But anyway, this is what it looked like. Look at the police and on the paint, on everything, and it's sort of everything in Chile is like a target if it has anything to do with authority and the police state that's there right now. And this was just, people threw some Molotovs at this while we were there. So anyway, it's quite exciting. And it's amazing how people, like, you can see people in the foreground just standing there, like, screw you. And that's kind of the big feeling I got from the people that were in the resistance. And by the way, the people, the youth, particularly that are in the streets fighting, are called the front lines, and they are supported by the majority, I think, of the people, or at least the majority. I think the majority are a huge part. In the United States, the tactics that are used down in Chile, well, you see what's happening in Portland and stuff, and people here they don't recognize why people are mad and pissed off. And I think in the United States now, with the murder of George Floyd, people are finally starting to feel that anger. And yes, yeah, this was not started by the Carabineros, Gary, but there are a lot of little street fires like this, and it's kind of a thing. It's part of the blockade because there are blockades everywhere, blockading the street. Here's a man that was tear gassed, and also the person up to his right. There are two medics there giving him immediate first aid. And as I said, that the medics and street medics were targeted by the water cannons, by the Carabineros, and medics were just targets. And I believe that some of this is really against the UN, or the Geneva Convention, but that's also the use of tear gas like that. And speaking of tear gas, here is one of the ways when tear gas came, people would actually pick the tear gas up and put it in these buckets to extinguish it. And just watching people doing that, it's amazing. And this is a little happy shot I have here because it's getting close to Christmas. And one of the protesters has a little Santa cap on, and on the person next to him has basically about a shield that kind of represents the Mapuche flag, I believe. And some of the artwork is so beautiful on these things that maybe I'll blow it up and not blow it up with anything other than camera stuff, and see what kind of a photo I can get. And this was taken on Friday the 13th in December. What was the day of it? We call it Full Moon Friday the 13th at the Chile Uprising in Santiago. And this is, I guess, the last day Ann and I were there. Gary left, I think, a day or two before. But we actually went out to buy some Christmas presents for the family. And as we're walking along, we just got drug into the people of the protests. And things were very serious. These people are destroying the pavement or sidewalk or whatever to find projectiles. And that a lot of that was going on for self-defense. Here people are tearing up part of a road. Oops, I wanted to mention, Ann talked about that. The Los Tesis and the women that do this wonderful song, "The Rapist is in Your Past," and that woman is from the Red Masks and Resistance. A lot of women, they marched into the square that night. I think it was on the Human Rights Day, actually. And it was amazing to see thousands of women just marching in together. And I think my last photo this is not photoshopped. This is actually on the 50th day since the beginning of the protests. And this is what it looked like. There's a Plaza de la Dignidad. There's you can see flares have been lit, and it was just joyous. I mean, I can't imagine seeing anything like this in the United States, but I hope to one day, at least. Yeah. And that's about it. I also want to turn this over to Ann, and thank everybody for putting up with me. And sorry if I'm ran a little late, but I want to turn it over to Ann. And also just remember, one of the things that we wanted to have this virtual exhibition is we wanted to make sure that people see some of what's going on in other countries. And then you have federal agents now in the United States, the federal police, and it's very scary what's going on right now. So I don't know if we'll get a chance to talk about it. We planned on it, but so Ann, you're up.
Thank you. So I'm not going to wear this the whole time. Just to give the example that while we were in Santiago and Temuco, we got a lot of practice wearing this mask. This is actually the mask that from the protests in there, and it still actually smells like tear gas, and it's making me start to be affected here. Anyway, it was a really inspiring time to be in Chile, and we went down there for the UN Climate Convention and to expose the false solutions there and talk about the impacts of the false solutions of the Climate Convention on the Mapuche people and on the other people in Chile, as well as on the forests and the incredible environment in Chile. And when that got moved to Madrid because of the uprising and because of the government's overreaction to the uprising, the violence of the uprising, they moved it to Madrid, but we stayed in Chile because once we got an idea of what was happening there, we just knew we had to be there and document it and be part of it. So I'm going to show a couple of short videos to give kind of a bigger example of what was going on in Chile, or maybe more of a feeling beyond the photos of what was going on in Chile as we talk a little more about the situation there. And just to mention, I have the Mapuche flag here behind me with the Marichiwao, sorry, it's backwards, that Alejandra mentioned, meaning we will win 1,000 times in Mapu, the Mapu language. And this was in Santiago, all over the place. People were so much in solidarity with the Mapuche struggle, and they showed it with the flags all throughout Santiago. So let me share my screen, and I will show the first video I'm going to show is from the Mapuche territory, and it's the Mapuche people themselves talking about why they're struggling, and you can get a better sense of who they are and the environment there.
En la cosmovisión mapuche hacemos todas nuestras ceremonias, siempre el respeto se da hacia la naturaleza. Hoy día como jóvenes lo están faltando lo que es lo vital para el mapuche, que es la tierra, su ñuquemapu. Y hoy en día en el territorio hay hartas cosas que lo están afectando, ya sea la hidroeléctrica que quieren hacer en nuestro territorio.
Nosotros queremos recuperar nuestro vivir mapuche, nuestro sentir mapuche, queremos que nuestros hijos vivan en paz.
Y este espacio que hoy día estamos ocupando, que por historia es nuestro, por derecho legítimo, nuestras familias vivieron, nacieron aquí en este territorio.
Como comunidad solamente queremos proteger nuestro territorio, queremos proteger nuestra tierra.
Hacemos un llamado a estar atentos, a que estén preparados porque fuerzas especiales nuevamente se nos vienen encima.
La familia Chaín está deforestando nuestra Mapu, nuestra tierra. Estamos quedando sin esteros, sin canales, sin agua.
¿Cómo han destruido con la plantación exótica de pinos y de eucalipto, donde se nos han secado nuestras aguas? Esa es la razón de que nosotros estamos. Pero no es una toma, sino es una recuperación de nuestro territorio.
Nosotros del día 14 de noviembre del 2019 entramos al fondo Río Blanco a hacer un control territorial para los huaychafes de afuera que han caído, que el Estado chileno ha asesinado cobardemente por la espalda. Un gran afafana a mis huaychafes como Camila Castrayanka, Alex Lemun, todos esos huaychafes que dieron la lucha por el pueblo mapuche, y uno como mapuche se siente orgulloso, yo como joven me siento orgulloso de estar aquí luchando por lo que es justo, porque esto es algo justo y que la lucha no va a acabar.
Porque nuestros jóvenes, nuestros peñas, nuestra lamien tienen la más clara visión y la más clara decisión de que no lo vamos a salir tan fácil de acá.
Nuestros antepasados nos dan la fuerza, nos dan el negüen para nosotros seguir adelante. Vamos a recuperar nuestra tierra. Vengan que venga, peleen lo que peleen, nosotros vamos a seguir aquí, nosotros no nos vamos a mover de aquí. Mi comunidad no se va a mover de aquí.
So that's a sense of what the Mapuche people are struggling for and who they are through their own words. And that was part of the purpose of our documentation there. Oren took the photos, which have the power to stand by themselves. And then I shot the video to give people an idea of what people were thinking in their own words and in their own situations, and to see for yourself the full experience of what was happening. One of the videos I'm going to show was Gary's. That's the one of the Carabineros actually attacking the Red Cross. We saw them attacking street medics a lot, but when they actually went after the Red Cross, it was on International Human Rights Day. And Oren and I were at the Plaza de la Dignidad, and we saw the water cannons, and we said, okay, we gotta find a safe place to be here. So we went over to the Red Cross. We thought, we'll be over by the Red Cross because, you know, that's a safe place to be. Don't touch the Red Cross. Well, all of a sudden the water cannons started coming toward the Red Cross. So we quickly relocated to a different part of the park. But so I'll show that video next as an idea of what the repression was that the people were experiencing. So you saw in the Mapuche territory how the Carabineros came in and what they did there. They were doing that constantly on a daily basis in Santiago when the street protests were going on. So let me see if I can find that video here.
All right, Anne, thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone who made it today. It's really an honor to have people putting their energy into attending this, and really props to Oren and Anne, and an amazing attempt. It's different than having a glass of wine and talking about this stuff. And also everyone's having lots of patience. I think the technical difficulties are there, but I think the video, as you can see right there, the guanaco, the water cannon is making its attempt to basically disperse the crowd. They're not shooting the water cannon directly into the Red Cross tent, but they attack anyone and everyone near there, and it was very intimidating. And really drive home that this is on the International Day of Human Rights, December 10th and December, while the United Nations climate meetings irregularly moved to Madrid, were taking place with the Chilean government holding the presidency of these climate meetings. And being in Santiago during this time really exposed to me how dangerous it is when we in the United States basically acquiesce to these corporate friendly climate policies, because what we think may be just kind of negotiations in a space like the United Nations or in Sacramento is what we're really seeing is that these policies are being weaponized in the global South. And what's happening in Chile is a clear sign of that. And this contradiction between the rhetoric around equity and climate justice that's coming from many corporations that are involved with the United Nations climate discussions, contrasted with the police brutality and the militarization and the repression that's happening on the ground. I think these are messages that we in the US really need to take to heart in informing our own organizing on these issues. And this is where I think what's happening in Chile is really important for all of us who are working on global climate justice to make sure that we have the right context on our political efforts. So again, thanks to everyone who showed up today, for Anne and Oren for organizing, and for Alejandra joining in. It's really an honor to be able to share just a few words about this important work.
And thanks to Teresa too, who introduced us.
Thanks, Gary. And then I wanted to move on to a video. This next video, it's still short, it's only about a minute, but it gives sort of an idea of the full scale of these protests starting in the early afternoon. This is on the International Day for Climate Action, the middle weekend within the official UN Climate Convention, when there's a global day of action every year. And this is the one in Santiago, and it starts off very, gay and bright in the afternoon and then goes all the way into the night, but people continue to be joyous. So we go from this video of the attack on the Red Cross to a little bit more of the excitement and the happiness that we saw pretty much every day in the street protests.
El agua es un tesoro que vale más que el oro.
So that's an idea that gives a little better overview of what the street protests in Chile were like, and that was the International Day for Climate Action. And yeah, the spirit of people in Chile was, Oren and I took that home with us. We left in the middle of December, and going from that and knowing we were going back to the impeachment trial and the holidays was really almost unbearable. But Oren mentioned that we were going Christmas shopping. That's a little bit of a, not entirely the case. We were going for these souvenirs. This is the La culpa no era mía, the fault is not mine. It's the symbol of the rapist in your path performance that's gone viral now. And this was from Alejandra to Oren. This was a Matapacos banner, and Matapacos is the guardian dog of the protesters. He's a black mutt with a red bandana around his neck, and he was actually not alive at the time of these street protests, but had been alive during previous street protests and was known to be on the front lines with the protesters and would defend them against the attacks by the police. So, and then another thing that we brought home with us, which was interesting, was this is hard to understand what it is maybe on video, but it's a homemade gas mask. And it was given to us by one of the young people at the protests. And I think they saw us and said, oh, geez, look at these old foreigners. They clearly need help. And so one of them gave us this homemade gas mask. It's a 2-liter soda bottle with a soda can duct taped on and holes punched in the end of it, and then some cotton wadding in the can. So, when you breathe through it, you can be more protected from the tear gas. But people really did take care of us in the street, and we stuck out like sore thumbs because of, being Norteamericanos in the streets there. And when we were almost ambushed by the Carabineros in Temuco, people grabbed us, and the street medics grabbed us and took us around the corner and hid us behind some fence. And that's the last video I'll show, is the video from that day, the Women's March in Temuco. And then I'm going to pass the baton over to Alejandra, who's going to talk about the current situation and the repression that's continuing to go on against the street vendors and other people who are trying to make a living during this pandemic. So let me show this last one, and I'll turn over the mic.
Yo pero que no soy de nadie, voy a
now turn it over to Alejandra.
Thank you, Anne. All those pictures and videos are so exciting. My heart is beating. Those were like the best years, the best months of my life, I think. It's incredible to be part of something like that. But unfortunately, the pandemic situation came in, and so everybody had to go back into their homes, and we really started to use all those networks we built during the uprising, just to help the more vulnerable people, the poorest people, to endure this situation of the pandemic. And yes, as you said before, in Chile, we have a lot of informal workers. So those informal workers don't have a salary or unemployment insurance. So they really need to get out to the streets to work. And so in Temuco, we had 1 month of compulsory quarantine. And during that month, a lot of people couldn't go out to the streets to get their living. And after that quarantine finished, the street vendors went out to the streets to sell their products. And specifically in Temuco, there is this group of Mapuche women who sell on the street products they grow in their lands, like vegetables and fruits and free-range eggs, toasted flour, etc. And in Temuco, we have this municipal ordinance that does not allow people to sell in the center of the city. And so during the first days, like these women have spent more than a month without selling anything, without having any money to pay, basic stuff. And so they went out to sell their products, and they got a terrible, violent answer from the municipality and carabineros repressing them. And I want to show just a short video of it. Of one day in particular, when, can you see the screen? Can you see my screen? Yes, yeah, so that's the answer of Temuco's municipality. to the needs of people, to make their living during this pandemic situation. So we have all been trying to use our solidarity to help these more vulnerable people during this situation. But we also are starting, to do protests on the streets little by little in some cities where there is no compulsory quarantine. And especially lately, because there is Mapuche political prisoners in a hunger strike. Most of them, there are 9 political prisoners on a hunger strike, and most of them, like 8 of them, are over 80 days in this hunger strike. So it's a very, very critical situation. They are asking for the implementation of the 169 convention from the International Work Organization about indigenous rights to be applied to the prison condition, so that they can do some of the time at home, especially during this sanitary crisis, because they can get the virus in the jail. And also, not all of them are actually condemned. Some of them are only in prison waiting for the trial. So they are asking to be sent home, basically, until the trial is done. And so we have had a lot of protests related to that in Temuco lately. But we are, just trying to get over this situation and go to the streets again and get the uprising upstanding and get our change in the constitution that is planned for October right now. So we really want to get well so we can change the constitution in October.
There's a question, Alejandra, from one of the participants asking what kinds of international solidarity would be useful at this time.
Especially on this situation about the Mapuche political prisoners, I think international solidarity would be really good, like some pressure from the outside, because the situation is getting really critical. We could have like a disease. We could have like the death of one of them pretty soon. So, and the government is not reacting as usual. It's not listening to the demands. So yeah, some pressure from the outside, it would be really good for this situation that is very urgent to solve right now. Thank you for the question, and thank you to all of you guys for sharing these moments, for having me as a company in your journal in Chile. That was a pleasure and an honor to me, and I hope you can come back soon.
Thank you, Alejandra. I hope we get a chance to come back too. And it was a pleasure being with you. We've known you since what, about 2005 or something, I think. And so I don't think we ever spent this much time together, but it was great. I mean, it's a lovely time. I couldn't imagine 4 better people to have traveled with. I don't think any of us fought. Nobody got slapped. It was pretty cool. And
there's one more question, which I think Gary's going to answer.
Yeah, so from Alan's question about the rise of the right, in that I just didn't understand how the question and answer tool worked, but Alan brings up a typed question about the rise of the right in the Americas from Canada down to Chile, and concerns about assaults continuing on Indigenous people, especially as the global environmental crisis escalates. And I think it's very insightful. I definitely believe that as the global crisis continues, that we will see greater assaults on the land base that belongs to Indigenous people. We will see attempts to repress and oppress any attempts to look for redress around those grievances, as we're seeing in southern Chile, the militarization and the repression of people who are challenging the usurpation of their land. And I think, though, that in Chile, one thing is that people have a much stronger understanding of the connection, for instance, between Trump, Bolsonaro, and Piñera, as I would put it, and I put it in the chat, and less so here in the United States. I think, for instance, there's a lack of understanding in the US about what the Piñera government really represents in terms of his alliance with Trump. And too many folks who might qualify themselves as liberal or progressive will instead align themselves with the imperialist agenda against Maduro in Venezuela. Regardless of any real complaints about Maduro on the grander political scheme, it's really clear that Trump and Piñera's alliance is something that needs to be addressed to secure change. So these are bigger picture questions that I believe we in the United States who are organizing for social justice are really benefited by seeing and answering those questions through the lens of social movements such as what's happening in Chile, because of the depth of their memory and the depth of their analysis to really understand how power and wealth works, which I think in the United States, there's still a lot of performative positioning, especially from the environmental movement around how to address wealth and power. And then also when it really comes down to it with police brutality, it seems to me that any group in the United States involved with environmental issues who is now denouncing police brutality, but who still will basically turn a blind eye to the United Nations climate process, basically endorsing the police brutality in Chile by failing to stand up against it. I think those are the steps that we need to make here in the United States to actually build out a movement that's prepared to act in solidarity with social movements in other parts of the world.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that, Gary, that in the United States, well, actually there's a question here that says, do you think the movement and the influence on the current movement, specifically they share the leaderless strategy? And, I think that we would hope that we're helping to spread the word about Chile to people in the United States as an example of organization. I mean, it is a leaderless, yes, it's a leaderless strategy, it seems like to me, but people are organized. I think that's one of the big things about Chile that I will say, people are organized and they are closer knit, I believe. And this didn't pop up overnight in Chile. It took a long time for this to happen. And I remember when we first saw Alejandra, when we got to Temuco, she said that at one time she thought her life was just like really, almost meaningless because nothing was happening. And then all of a sudden, I think, she saw the seeds that she planted. And I think that's what we're all trying to do, is plant seeds so something can grow. And I would hope that people in the United States can organize, and specifically just remember that things are going to get a lot worse here. I'm not a prophet and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I can see the writing on the wall. And I believe with the federal agents that are being deployed in the United States, that's a strong sign that something is going to continue to happen. And people said, "Oh, they took the federal agents out of Portland." No, they really didn't. They put them in a different place besides where they were hanging out. and they haven't left. And if things don't calm down, they're going to go back again, I believe. So just when it gets to this point with federal police and federal agencies coming in, Homeland Security running the show, I could say that people need to be very wary and be on the lookout for martial law. And when that happens, if it happens, know who your friends are and who are your people that you can trust. I hope that the COVID-19, somehow we can do something about it, or that it or whatever, but expect a lot worse because of the climate. The problem what's going on the earth right now, that we have tremendous problems and people are not taking it serious enough. We live on one planet, Earth, and people want to destroy it, and it is being destroyed. And what we saw in Chile were people that were trying to stop that, even if they didn't say, "Oh yeah, we're all about environmentalism." You know that they were trying to stop the bad stuff that's going on, and I'll leave it at that. But I really hope that people will go look back. I'm going to put some of the photos up in the gallery, in the Buen Vivir gallery. It's Buen Vivir gallery. Is it gallery.org? I think.
Yes.
Okay, and I guess I could put down a. Well, go ahead. I'll let somebody finish this, and I'm going to type down the web addresses.
Well, put that one down, and Langell Photography, so people can see more of your work documenting struggles around the world. And thank you, everyone. As Oren's putting this in the chat, we can follow up with everybody who participated as well with an email with this information. So you don't have to stay on while Oren is typing. But anyway, you go to photolangell.org for more photos, and to buenvivirgallery.org, where we will be posting this as well as the photo exhibit later. Thank you all for participating. Thank you all to the panelists. Thank you, Teresa, for introducing everyone, and appreciate everyone's time who has participated in this. It's a really important issue, the uprisings in Chile and the uprisings in the United States and what's happening in Portland and other cities. And I think we have a lot we can learn from what happened in Chile, and tremendous possibilities for the future. I know it looks bleak also, as Oren was saying, but it also looks amazingly more possible now than it did a year ago, at least from my perspective. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
for everyone who came. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Peace. Take care.